In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. A little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP. Hey, you gumpers.
Hola, bon dia, alegria. Munson here with the Good Morning Portugal show, a live stream and podcast. We've got Mr. S joining us this morning from France. Bonjour, les amis. Je suis en France. That's a difficult one. Actually, Philomena will be with us tomorrow. Just reminded suddenly. Esqueci todo meu português. Bem haja. Yes, it's bem haja comment that you don't hear too often. I think that's a central and northern Portugal thing. Thank you, Mr. S. How is France at the moment? I was in the US as well, he says. And hola, vossa merce, Senor Munson. So yeah, quite formal is Mr. S. Keep it coming and join us tomorrow as we'll be singing again with Philomena. I always love the singing sessions, and I'll put the song up actually if you want to get ahead of that in the Portugal Club. I'll stick that up in there as well so that you can get training tonight. Sing up at the back, please. Bon dia, Gumpers, from Jackie this morning, who's urging you to smash that like button in anticipation of seeing Tony on the screen this morning. I'm sure Portuguese are with me in a couple of minutes. Smash that like button, my friends. It will help. It really helps me out, and it costs you nothing. And if you don't, it's ignorant. Oh, I think I might have heard that before somewhere else. Yes. Actually, when you come on, you feel free to do that on my behalf if you like. That'd be great. And then I can play it as a jingle. Fantastic. Coach Turner's in with a God Squad tip of the day. And we'll come back to that a little bit later on as well. And this morning, we're looking at the Portugal news with Tony, see what's caught his eye. I think he's got his panties in a bunch about the new digital ID. Let's find out if that is the case or not. Bon dia, Gumpers from James. Feliz quinta a todos, como va? From James this morning. How are you? Hope everything went well with you, James, in the last couple of days. And bon dia, Portugal from João Ernesto up in the north there. Let's hear that in person. From him, shall we? Oh no, that's Michael there. Well, have I got one of you, João de Nord? Oh yes, I do. And I can't see at this scale. Let me just see if this is the one.
Bon dia.
No offense to you, Mike, but that's not the one I'm looking for right now. This is not the video you're looking for.
Bon dia, Portugal.
There you go, resounding across the valley there. And I hope your garden's in better shape. I imagine you tended to it yesterday. And the picture yesterday of the swooning bird of paradise was rather sad, wasn't it? If you feel like that this morning, or like this, I should say, that's what happened. That's some storm damage right there. And of course, love and best wishes to anyone who's still struggling with storms in our community around the world, particularly in Florida at the moment and the aftermath in North Carolina. Hope you're well. Let us know if there's anything we can do for you. Okay, let's give him a nice big round of applause and bring him onto the screen. Hola, bon dia.
Bon dia, Portugal. Sorry.
To the bang.
To the bame. Is it to the?
Listen,
is it to the bame or to the bame?
To the bang.
So we need Catty.
You definitely. Or come and join us with Philomena tomorrow. I saw you got pulled up on that on your YouTube channel. It's not to the bang. It's to the bang. Yes. Okay.
What's the difference? I think you just said the same thing twice.
Well, that's how it is to the foreign ear, of course, Tony. But
when
you've been here a little while, there's a certain level of discernment that comes in.
I tell you what, you know, I lived in Hong Kong for years. It's even worse there. Because they have the tonal, the tones. Yeah. So I remember this.
Mandarin. Is your Mandarin good?
Well, in Hong Kong we speak Cantonese.
Yes,
yeah. So, did I do a racism? Did I do a racist? No, I'm just joking. But yeah, it's
Yes, you did. Yeah, sorry, goodbye.
It's
Cancelled in 6 minutes.
It's Cantonese in Hong Kong.
Of course it is. I knew that. Yeah.
But yeah, for example, there's like, just to give you an example, because I was a kindergarten teacher there for many years, and there's Gao, for example. Gao means old, glue, water, 9. And anyone who can speak Cantonese will be like, what's he talking about? They're completely different, because Gao means 9, Gao means water, Gao, you know what I mean? This little difference, right? So I had a kid in a class asking me where the glue was, and he said, you know, Mr. Tony, where is the chat gao? And what I heard was dog water.
Yes.
Dog water.
Just outside by the door.
Where is the dog water? You know, but yeah, same as and there's lots of words that can be like that, like lock you, 6 fish is what I heard.
Lock you, yeah.
So lock you, but it means big rain, muito chuva. Yeah. So yeah, I've had this experience before with these languages. Yeah. You can understand it if it's like, well, Cantonese is even worse because you can't understand it if it's written down, right? But
yes,
I think can I ask all of how many of us are viewing today?
A few more than we've been getting on a Tuesday evening. At which point we might advertise our new show together on a Tuesday evening, where it's gloves off, isn't it? Gloves off. No such thing as a quiet news day for expat Euro news for months.
I just wanted to ask everyone's opinion. Do you find Portuguese easier to read than to speak or hear?
I've heard.
I certainly do. I find it pretty easy to read. You know, I can more or less read the news in Portuguese.
Yeah,
but I can't speak it. No.
I think that is the case for some people, particularly Spanish speakers. If they've got a grounding in Spanish, they can read a Portuguese newspaper quite well. But yeah, and I think, you know, the usual things develop. You know what it's like. You're a teacher. As soon as you begin to tell yourself something is difficult and you start having a syndrome about it, the more and more difficult it becomes. Right?
Yeah.
And you need an intervention of some sort. So no M is what James is saying. It's not just that. The way you say "tudo bem."
It's kind of like a hint of an N there, isn't there? Tudo bem.
Definitely, there is the there's the sound, but there's something else you add to it in your own typically Portuguese sort of way, with an undercurrent of rebelliousness. It's like a flourish of eccentricity with an undercurrent of rebelliousness.
The thing is, though, they take the piss a bit, if I may say that. I think
who are we talking about now?
The Portuguese. The Portuguese. It's like, hey, bloody try and speak Portuguese. And I'm like, okay. And then it's like, bloody speak it perfectly. You know what I mean? It's like, all right.
Yes. Bang. You're getting coaching from every angle now. Just before we do
something like that, yeah, bang.
When you were in Hong Kong, were you called a guilo? Is that the Cantonese for foreigner, or the man?
That was always a big debate in Hong Kong as well, was whether that's a racist term. You know?
Well, it is, isn't it? Isn't it like the devil who smells of dairy products? Literally?
Well, my argument was always very interesting, if I may say so myself.
Yes, of course.
Well, obviously. Well, it was. I think it was racist, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
I think it is racist. I mean, it literally means white ghost. You know what I mean?
Yes,
you know what I mean? So I'm like, yeah, but it's obviously racist. You obviously, and I have been called a guilo. I have had it where in any other circumstance it would be racist. Like we were trying to rent an apartment, and the landlord said no guilos.
Is that right?
Yeah, you know.
Okay, bye.
And I had another one, which was like a bit of I was coming out of a car park, and the guy was coming down the ramp the wrong way. Oh, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "F off, guilo," and
really?
You know, do something to your mother that I won't repeat at this time of the morning. And
you felt some racist heat there, but you say you weren't too bothered about it. It's all part of the cut and thrust of life. There is it for you?
Well, I generally don't think people should be as bothered about it as they are, which I know I know it's controversial, but sometimes I think So I'm very old fashioned about this kind of sticks and stones sort of thing. I think some
Yes.
things get elevated out of all proportion. And I think that if you're not careful, you're kind of handing power to people with bad
Intentions.
intentions.
Yes.
Did you know what I'm
I
saying?
do,
Like, for
absolutely. Yeah.
example, to put it another way, if I let the word guilo consume my being, you know what I mean? And like every time I heard it, it meant that I had to, like, burn shops down and tip cars over and all that sort of thing. Then I don't think my life would be improved in any measurable way.
And not your community neither. I suppose
No.
what we're not talking about there is the sort of structural or contextual part of that, I suppose. And then
Well,
it's
they wouldn't rent a house to me.
so we had no chance.
But on the other hand, there is a thing in Hong Kong called the Guilo Pass, right? And how the Guilo Pass works is,
Is this a geographical, like the Khyber Pass, or is this a kind of travel document?
like the Watford Gap, maybe? But as a teacher, I quite often went to people's homes and did private lessons, especially in sort of the early years. And what I noticed is that quite often when I would go to like an apartment building, there's always security guards there, and quite often if you're a Guilo, they just open the door and let you through, right? So this is the Guilo Pass, and sometimes I had the experience,
a sociological phenomenon, yeah.
So I had another thing where a couple of times I got pulled over by the police. Maybe I was speeding a little bit or speaking on my phone, and then they walk up to the car and look at you and just go.
Really?
So that's the Guilo Pass.
Oh,
doesn't always work, but I would say most Guilos in Hong Kong, well, maybe not nowadays, but definitely 10, 15 years ago, you definitely experienced it was, yeah, I mean, people talk about I can't remember what the word is for it, but you definitely experienced a little bit of an easier ride for having white
as we
skin.
do here, right? Let's be honest about it.
Yeah.
There are groups that are treated more favorably for sure, and we are lucky enough, you and I, with how we appear at the very least, and how we come across, are in those privileged groups, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's what the word I was looking for, white privilege.
Yes,
white privilege is the kind of woke term for it. But it's been interesting because when I've heard some pals talk about, there's no such thing as white privilege, and I've had to sort of say, to be honest with you, I've actually experienced it,
benefited from it,
blatantly, and benefited. But I've also seen it. For example, I think I've actually told this story maybe once on this show, or maybe two in private. But in Hong Kong, when I was saving up because I wanted to start my own business, my own language center, which I did in the end. But to save money to do that, I took on several jobs, like moonlighting after my teaching day job. And one of them I would go to the airport and unload cargo for other expats and help transport it to their apartments. So I kind of had this kind of concierge service thing going on.
Very good.
Yeah, but so on a kind of a anti-woke thing, I know that a lot of expats in Hong Kong aren't Guilos. So, for example, one particular chap I helped was a young IT guy who was from the Philippines.
Yes,
and he was an expat, and as it goes, he was he's a professional guy and probably earned more money than I did. And but I noticed when we turned up at the apartment with all his gear, the security guard held the door open for me and let it slam in his face. Bizarre. And I had to tell the security guard, I'd say, listen, mate, actually, he's the boss, the boss, mate, and I'm working for him.
Wow, can't compute that. Very interesting, isn't it? And that's why, Tony, I think it's important to have conversations about these things. And I saw this meme online. Who is that guy there? I can't see that in the grayed out writing there exactly. But
isn't that the guy off Walking Dead? I don't know who he is.
It looks like Robert Downey Jr., a young Robert Downey Jr.
I think Robert Downey Jr. would take offense at that.
Well, he takes everything. I don't care.
no, this guy. Have you not watched The Walking Dead?
No.
Is it this? Well, you won't know who it is then. He's
I don't know who it is.
Negan. Negan, that's who he is. He's the
Right.
guy who had the baseball bat with barbed wire. Particularly nasty guy.
Oh, he sounds terrible. I'm regretting showing him on the screen if that's how he behaves.
Well, remember,
yes,
that was just a part he was acting.
oh, yeah, okay, thank you for that. Yeah, all right. Okay, it's an emotional roller coaster ride this morning. Okay, I feel okay again. Now, thank you. Just because I address something doesn't mean I'm trying to argue. For some reason, I thought.
Yeah, right.
I thought of you when I saw this morning flash past my eyes. There are a number of things that flashed past my eyes this morning. That was another one of them. My bed when I tried to sleep, there's a medieval stone bed from Oberdosh basement, your cellars there. And then my bed when I'm trying to wake up. That's the truth, is it not? And then there was this from the other day, bus drivers, when they see each other, spare a thought for bus drivers. And that's for you, Pam, who's on the bus. That's what your drivers are going to see. Probably in this sort of situation from that seat. There's a bus driver. Alfezera, you're on the way to Lisbon. Have a great day there, Pam. Yeah, but back to this fella, and I thought immediately of you. I like to talk things out. I love clarity. We're adults, so communicate. I think that's a little bit of a put down at the end. That's not necessary, is it? It's like, we're adults, you're not. But I think that's a very good sentiment. And just because you address something doesn't mean you've got a strong position with which you need to or want to upset other people. I mean, even if you do sometimes.
That did look like it had been kind of like. It wouldn't surprise me if he said that he didn't say the bit at the end. Yeah, just whoever made the meme probably tacked that on. To be honest.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Changing it from quite a lofty and noble sentiment to ultimately making a group of people wrong and a bit of a put down, which is never good. If you're seeking clarity, that might not be the best way to do it. To say, we're adults and inferring or implying that the others who you're speaking to are not
behaving like children.
Might not land very well. Also, while we're having a look at pictures this morning, do you recognize this building, Tony?
Isn't that the it's Battersea?
Well done. Yes.
Power station, looking a little bit different to how I remember it.
Same here, Battersea, as I prefer to refer to it, to having been schooled nearby. Battersea Power Station. There was one down the road at Fulham, I think, as well. But this was the one that was, of course,
that was called Fulham Power Station, though, wasn't it?
It was. the one in Fulham was called Fulham Power Station for some reason. And these stood empty for years, didn't they? After they stopped burning coal in the middle of the city, I thought better of it. Yeah. Actually, it was quite good. We're fishing for eels in the Thames. Apparently, there were turbines, I think, as well in the water, or they used the water to cool down the towers or something like that. But this is now a shopping centre. This tracks the evolution of humanity, of course, doesn't it? That's a shopping centre, and of course, the iconic image from the Pink Floyd cover as well. And Ian, who sent that, Coach Turner, who sent that, says this building's a bit. Is that MI5? What's he sharing with us here? This was my old school, a bit further downstream. Wow, a school. What a lovely location for a school. And I'm immediately thinking things, school caps, satchels would have been thrown in the river, if not the students themselves from time to time there. Amazing. Thank you for those memories of London. That's looking great, London. Actually, I watched one of those walk and talks in London yesterday, and I did feel a little bit of nostalgia for the old place. This guy walking about the West End, Leicester Square and so on, and he was having a great time. Chinese restaurants, back to Chinese culture, and he walked through Chinatown, all those fantastic Chinese buffets there. Anyway, okay, that's what we'll attempt to do this morning. We're addressing things this morning, and I don't think Tony is meaning to argue. He likes to talk things out, and he loves clarity. That's my experience of him. That's what we do on a Tuesday evening, and we'll apply ourselves to a little bit of Portuguese news today. We'll have a look at the front covers virtually of the Portugal News and the Portugal Resident, and anything else you want to chuck our way. One thing that had you going immediately to your YouTube channel yesterday was the latest development of the digital ID. What's bothering you about that, Tony?
Well, digital IDs bothers me generally because I believe I've seen because I lived in Hong Kong for so long, and we regularly went to China. Like I'm not sure how many people who've never sort of visited Hong Kong, because we always think of Hong Kong as being so separate to China. But for example, I lived in a city called Tuen Mun in Hong Kong, and for us it was actually closer to go to Shenzhen in China than go to Hong Kong Island to go shopping, for example. So we regularly went over the border into China, and I've got relatives in Zhuhai, and in Chongshan as well. So and Hunan as well, for that matter. But I've been kind of traveled quite a lot in China, and we saw. I saw the change. I saw. I first went to China during the Beijing Olympics, when it looked as though China was going to start to open up to the rest of the world, and
It looked like it.
Well, it did kind of really feel like it was working probably until the mid 2010s, I want to say, when it started getting back into that kind of vibe again of authoritarianism. And and we saw the introduction of the social credit scheme.
Did you?
I've tried to have conversations with even relatives in China about things like social media bans and things like that, and they don't talk. They just, it's like talking to a politician. You can't have a conversation about it. And now it's to the point.
What do you mean? What do you mean? They don't want to talk about it. They're scared to talk about it, or they just wish you wouldn't bring it up.
It's impossible to know. It might be a combination of all three. But when I tried to have a conversation, for example, with my brother-in-law about like Facebook, and I know he knows about it because he works in Macau. He lives in Zhuhai in China, and he commutes to Macau. Macau being the ex-Portuguese enclave, is similar to Hong Kong in a way. But when you go to Macau, all of a sudden you can use YouTube, you can use Facebook, you can
really,
I mean, you walk over the border, and
then all your alerts start pinging.
Yeah. So I know that and obviously if you're standing close enough to the border, you can do it also.
Yes.
So and I mean, I'm not sure if people who haven't been there understand how close it is. So for example, when I'm standing in my brother-in-law's apartment, his view out the window is the casino strip in Macau.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're right there.
Yes.
It's like there's.
Oh, so his commute is just to walk across a few streets to get from one country to another.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's not quite that close in Hong Kong, but it's pretty close.
Yeah,
it's pretty close.
And all of this to say, you have experienced digital identity, and what you think is coming here.
So what I'm saying is, it got to the point where now you everything's on your phone. All of your digital IDs on your phone.
Yes.
To get from like in Portugal, I'm just trying to think of a it'd be like if you want to go from Lisbon to Porto, right?
Yes.
That's in China, that would be called the Porto Special Administrative Region. It's got a fence around it.
Yeah.
When you drive up to a border, you have to show your digital ID if you wanted to go to Lisbon, for example. Depending on your credit score, they might ask you why are you going to Lisbon? Why are you going? Or they might not let you out of Porto.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or they might not let you. Well, what was once a conspiracy theory scribe the shows is true. And I haven't been there for 5 yees.
Okay.
So I mean,
this was happening for you over 5 years ago.
Yeah. And I remember little things like I often tell the story about so sometimes in Shenzhen, for example, I had to go to government offices, and when you go to like, for example, the car licensing place, and this will have only got worse now. And for example, the first time you go in, it takes a face scan of you, and then the next time you go, you don't have to go through security anymore because the building knows who you are and it greets you in Chinese.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's all face scanning and done like that. And you have a social credit score, right? And what that means is it could be things like something you've done in business, or like there's things they obviously do to make the people happy. They say, well, people who've got criminal records and things like that will have a lower score, but it could also be things like you've known to be critical of the party, or you've put bad posts on social media, and things like that. And this could stop you from getting a mortgage. This could stop you from getting a job. This could stop you from even traveling, because the way China's set up, some of especially the big cities, are kind of like, you can't just go there. You can't, do you know what I mean? You can't move around freely. Like like it's almost like lots of little different countries.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Administration, bureaucratic and security administrations, effectively.
And I mean, when you're driving there, it's again, I've never been anywhere like it. There may be other places like it that I just haven't been. Maybe North Korea, I don't know. But like when you're driving in a city like Shenzhen, and you don't notice it until the evening. But when you're driving, it's like every couple of seconds, it's like flash, 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 just constantly being photographed. Photographed, constant. Everywhere you go, there's CCTV. Like in some of the cities, when you jaywalk, the fine is immediately deducted from your bank account. Yeah. And in some of them, they even put like immediately they put a picture.
Very Portuguese. Yeah, okay.
They put a picture on the like they'll have a monitor near the place, and it'll come up there with your name. Like in real time, has just been fined for jaywalking.
No.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Well, it's very interesting to having this conversation about this with you, because you have that first-hand experience. And I'd like to ask you more about how the Chinese people, I mean, you can't speak for all of them, obviously, but you have a better sense of it than I do, for example, and what that means for us here then. And that's why, of course, you've been, I think, quite vocal and quick to go to YouTube or to record something about it. This is one of the stories in recent times here in Portugal that you're interested in. And there it is, pride of place on your YouTube channel. Please subscribe to the Portuguese channel, because if you don't, that's ignorant. That's dignity. So there it is, the first one there.
Well, they gaslight you with and they've gaslit because of course for many mainland Chinese people, their lives have improved greatly in the last.
Well, there you go. So that's an important part of this conversation.
And they're gaslighting us as well now, because they're saying, well, it's for our security. And the thing they're trying to say now, this is what I pointed out when you read this, when you watch these bureaucrats speaking, they tell you the truth between the lines, because they're lying by gaslighting. This is just my opinion, by the way, because they're lying by gaslighting. Sometimes you read between the lines. So they'll start the conversation by using words like "it will be voluntary," and then they'll accidentally say something later on like "this will come into force."
Yes, the voluntary thing will come into force.
Yeah, in the same conversation, and then they'll say things like, "Oh, this will." So I mean, I went through a news article that was in the Portugal News, I think it was, and who, by the way, it's sometimes their translations are a little bit so, but sometimes I'm quite impressed by the stuff they report. You know what I mean? I think they kind of fly under the radar a bit because they're in English.
Yeah, the Resident do the same, I think.
Yeah, but some of the stuff they report, I think, that wouldn't be in the Portuguese press. That wouldn't be the Portuguese press.
And again, that's a benefit for us being foreigners, isn't it?
Exactly. This is an example of, you could say this is maybe an example of, if not white privilege, expat privilege, I suppose, which is another thing.
Yeah.
But
there are two parts to that, aren't there? I think there is we're too small to be worried about. So you kind of let those rumblings happen. But also it's hard to track as well, isn't it? It's like, the nuance can be put forward in a way that might not be immediately understood. It's just like dissident journalism.
Yeah. By accident, so it's always worth looking. I like both. I like both of them for different reasons, but they both do that. They both report on news that may otherwise go unheard of, but
or be editorialized in a different way.
Or be editorialized in a different way, exactly. I mean, they like just to give you an example, and it's one I know that you spoke about. I can't remember who the reporter was who spoke about the
Natasha Don. I think you're probably talking about. Yeah. Natasha Don has a very, very good view on a rounded view.
And I mean, I reported her piece on YouTube and got a strike.
Did you?
From YouTube? Yeah. So that will give you an example of how free in a way they are to report, because I literally reported her piece and got a strike for misinformation of YouTube.
Well, there are all sorts of interesting reasons for that, I think, with the Resident. But anyway, I want to come back specifically to the digital ID thing, and you set it up beautifully there as a personal experience and being in a culture where it's already very firmly part of life. Is it? If, let's say you live in. There's something very interesting to me about how when countries are being reported on, or wars for that matter, you know, there's a Ukrainian war at the moment, and there are people who live in Ukraine who are unaffected by it. However, when you hear about the Russia-Ukraine war, you would think that every street is on fire, and God forbid, I'm not making a this is not in any way.
Hong Kong protests were like that, weren't they?
Exactly, and it's always the same everywhere you go, especially with a country like China. It's huge. So when you say happening in China, that might mean just a tiny bit. Is that the case with digital ID? Is it a city experience? And are there?
It's definitely mostly the cities. I mean, you can see it in Portugal. To be fair, can't you?
Well,
I mean, you can't drive a tractor around with no number plates in Lisbon, can you? You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, although I did see a vehicle, I think it was one of those old sort of Matavelia, old guy killer cars, and it had a hardboard wing on it as well, cable tied or tied on with string going down the Marginal in Lisbon. I thought that's why I love this city. But I take your point. People do behave differently in towns and cities, and that will be the case here, won't it? The hotspots for the digital ID will obviously
ultimately, and I know I've said this before, and interestingly, people are going to think I've got a secret crush on Katia because this will be the third time I've mentioned her just in this particular show. But interestingly, I remember her agreeing with me on this point because this is something that you know the World Economic Forum has described, is that eventually there will be a certain elite and people who kind of buy into this kind of globalist digital ID sort of scenario who live in the cities.
Yes.
And they actually describe the left, they call them the left behind, you know, which is the people who choose to live in the old, you know, rural villages and live that kind of different off-grid kind of style life.
And that's an accepted part of this philosophy or life view, is it? That those people will be left, will they be left behind and left alone?
Well, I think, Well, I've spoken about that before. I mean, I would certainly want to be in the bit outside, but if you've been like me and you've watched a lot of kind of dystopian movies, that can be
does it?
It can be good or bad. I mean, but yeah, you watch a movie like Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone in it. I mean, I feel like I could see some of that coming true, the kind of emasculation of men and the kind of like people getting ticketed for just because they say a swear word and that's offensive, so that, you know,
and their digital overlords are managing their lives.
Exactly. And it's happening bit by bit. It's happening.
It would appear to be the case, and I think it's very important for us to have a sort of big and open and an interesting conversation about this, and to look at what the alternatives and options are, of course, as well, because there's an inevitability about it. And can I just finish?
There is an inevitability about it.
May I conclude with the Chinese part of this, and let's bring it home, as in home to us here in Portugal. How, generally speaking, do Chinese people feel about what they're experiencing in your experience of talking to them, seeing them operating?
I think most of them are very happy because of the convenience,
the
convenience angle, right? Which is also the gaslighting I see from the EU, who's talking about it now. So they'll say things like, well, it's going to help you. Again, they say it's going to help us at border controls, right? And and of course, my question again was, hang on a minute. When I'm going out of the EU, that's someone else's, you know what I mean?
It's someone else's problem.
What are you talking about? So what borders exactly are you talking about? And I also said that in the context of knowing that some EU countries have recently started doing border checks again, right?
Yes.
So they're talking about, well, it's going to make you. So this is what they do, isn't it? They. Oh my God, they're going to make our life easier, and they're going to protect us, right? Where have we heard this before? It's going to make it easier for you. It's going to make it, you know, frictionless and. Yes. And to me, I drew a parallel with with something else that I thought probably a lot of my subscribers would agree with me on is I don't like to use the self-checkouts in supermarkets.
Yeah.
I do sometimes, though. I do sometimes, I must admit. So, for example, my local Pingo they've introduced self-checkouts. But what happens now is I keep meaning I want to have a word with it. There's a guy I know who works in there because he's also doubles as my postman. This is the kind of small town Portugal that I live in, right? But you know, I want to say to him where just, for example, the other day I was there and the queues were pretty long, but I could see that a couple of the checkout people were doing other things. Like one of them was washing the security alarm thing near the door.
Well, they could have been
And
on a
another
till.
one- yeah, you know, and so what I did, because I thought, well, that's annoying, so I'm going to go and use the self checkout.
Yes,
And so I'm
and
going
then
to
you
say
get
to him, look, surely if you were them, you
It's
would
called
go,
Shirley.
oh shit, I'm gonna open a checkout because otherwise I'm going to lose my job to this bloody robot.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, and they might say, "Well, I don't like this job anyway." I mean, this is all part of the same conversation, isn't it? Like jobs worth having and so on. I mean, presumably he's there because he's earning money, not because he loves the particular job. I don't know for sure, but this is all part of it as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Sometimes I want to say to people, you know, did you ever go backpacking and do all that kind of kind of nasty jobs? I mean, I did, and I've
done nasty jobs, definitely, yeah, but not.
Yeah, I mean, I've done some really nasty jobs, and sometimes you might want to say to people, "Well, it could be a lot bloody worse than working in Pingados." I could tell you
don't
that.
get me wrong. I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking work. Not. What I'm talking about is how people, if they're not particularly attached to what they're doing, they might not be sorry on one level to see it go. And if, you know, it's like it's all
maybe
part of this conversation is everything that's being done to us, isn't it? That's what I find fascinating about it. And that's why I'm interested in the Chinese experience. So I don't know anyone over there. You're my connection to that. And I'm very interested in human behavior and how people drift into this. And that's why I said I think it's an inevitability. It's based on convenience, isn't it? It's based on legislation, and it's very likely to happen.
A lot of people in, especially in those southern cities, like Shenzhen, I mean, it's they call it the biggest migration in the year. So on Chinese New Year, when everyone in Shenzhen gets up and goes back to their hometowns, it's considered to be the biggest human migration in the world. Right. Like literally millions of people. And I've joined it, and it's an unbelievable experience going down like an 8-lane highway that's just absolutely rammed with people going back to their rural roots. And many people have been lifted for the holiday, for the Chinese New Year holiday. So many people have been lifted out of poverty. And I mean, I've been to rural China. So I went with my brother-in-law and some other family members, Chinese people, out to Hunan, to their old rural village. And of course, that money gets back there as well. So people are prepared to. So, you know, I've been at a house. It's quite funny. I've been into a big, kind of posh, nicely built house where people are putting cigarettes out on the floor in the dining room.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, I'm not insulting them, but I'm talking like in the real use of the word provincial.
Yes.
You know, but like a nice new Hyundai parked out the front, a gold watch.
Yes. The trappings of
but they obviously don't know how to behave. You know what I mean? It's really quite funny. Because it's very new money, and so a lot of people have been lifted out of poverty by the regime there, and so they're prepared to put up with, in my opinion,
from
what
the
I saw,
inconvenience. Yes.
They're willing to tolerate quite a lot, and of course, if you know, not everyone gets a bad social credit rating, do they?
No, that's right. It's just the likes of us who probably who feel like we can't help ourselves.
Well, what you do is when your Guilo relative from Hong Kong comes and starts asking you whether it bothers you that you can't use Facebook, you just look at him blankly like you don't know what he's talking about.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Or you presumably in a very sophisticated version of this society, you buy a better credit score But anyway, let's not get into that right now, because that's where it goes, isn't it, with human beings? Right. We'll come back to this. I'm very interested to hear what your thoughts are on the subject, because it is heading this way, it would appear, and that's why the Portuguese has recorded not just one video. This is the latest in a series, I feel, 3 videos about the digital ID for Portugal. And interestingly, you mentioned about, you know, the comparison between city life, which is all about the social credit score, and rural poverty. And suddenly rural poverty is looking a whole lot more attractive, isn't it, for people? And people are moving to Portugal to enjoy rural poverty, aren't they?
Yeah.
Within the context of this whole conversation. I know it's relative. I'm not making a virtue of suffering or in being insulting to people. But we've got lots of lovely comments here. Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Especially going back to learning Portuguese, of course, and smashing that like button. I don't know even if we're going to get a chance to talk about this topic today, but I am measuring the days of sunshine, Tony, and the balance is in my favor, but only just, I got to say. Thank you. Smashing the like button will make the sun come out, so please do that. Bon dia from Pam, who is going to Lisbon, as she told us, and we even saw the pictures of that. Carl, it's ignorant meme. I thought it was saying that's dignity. I thought it was saying they's dignity or that's dignity at first, I've got to say. Jackie also says, I can read it, but only understand a few words, but it helps with learning. Absolutely. Keep reading, keep watching. Nunu recommended some old black and white films to us, which we started to watch last night, and my kids were picking out some words on there. I did incentivize them. I was paying them in a fit of pique, saying, I'll give you 2 cents for every word you can understand. And it cost me dearly. Portuguese is difficult, but not impossible. You just need lots of practice. Join us tomorrow with Philomena. We are learning more about the language and the culture tomorrow, as we do every month with Philomena. And we've got the old guy in Europe as well. James, a big fan, obviously, of learning Portuguese and encouraging others to do the same. All languages are challenging to learn, some more than others, of course, but any language is challenging. Yes, Mr. S, it's difficult to learn a foreign language, but there are some people who don't even try and say hi or thank you in French, for example. Yes, don't be that person. Pamela Smith, I'm not finding it easy to learn, but communicating with Portuguese people who don't speak English is always fun and an adorable experience. So there you go. That's lovely to hear. Life is difficult, so I think I'll just not even try. Yes, that gets a bit harder, I suppose, than just the language. Agree, Mr. S, says Jackie. When people don't try, it's pure laziness. Going back to Hong Kong now. Morning, Ray. Good to have you here with us this morning. What time is flying with the Portuguese, as it always does. One of our wine clients was Stanley Ho from Macau. I always love sending him a Christmas card with Bon Tal, ho, ho, ho. Very good. Learning to walk was difficult, at least in one point in all of our lives. Anyone just decides to not even try. Not many kids. Well, you get a lot more encouragement to learn how to walk than you do to learn a foreign language, I think. But to take your point, Jules Tours in London, brilliant on YouTube. Yeah, loving these walk and talks. And talking of nostalgia for your old place via YouTube or the telly, I saw a bit of this. The publicity is very good for this new northern sitcom. Felt a bit of nostalgia for Bolton, says Pam, after watching Alma's Not Normal. There are some cracking stereotypes in the vein, I think, of the royal family. It's very good, the little clip I saw. Bon dia todos. Can't be bothered to get a VPN and iPlayer, however. I can find a different way to see that. What was once a conspiracy theory. That's what we're talking about basically this morning, isn't it? I was in Beijing in 98 when Portugal handed over Macau to China. Guterres was the PM, Portuguese PM, and came to our trade fair. He's gone on to bigger and better things, isn't he, Antonio Guterres? I had a brain injury, couldn't write or read for many years. Recently, I passed a TEFL, and if I had not tried, I wouldn't have done it. Huge thanks to our own Portugal influence. If you don't try, exactly. Digital ID, says Jackie, on addressing the other big subject of the morning. It's all about control. It's getting stupid. In UK, you can now go to prison for not registering your budgie. No, that's not a joke.
We're going to talk about that. You don't know about this?
Yeah, you've got to register birds now, haven't you? And people register rubber chickens and frozen chickens, which I think is very British and very funny.
It's very funny. Yeah.
Did you want to say more about that?
No.
Okay. The banking Tesco apps have been sending texts telling consumers they're buying too much meat and salt and to reconsider their choices. Go boil your head, Tesco and the banks. They're awful, isn't it? Bondi Alegria, Pete says, beautiful morning and sunny day to go and chop some of the fallen trees. Okay, yeah. He's reframing the devastation into firewood there. Well done. Morning to you, Pete, and thank you for the picture. Look at this. A BA honours he is. He's a right boffin, his RP. 6 A levels. What a show off. A BA honours, a master's and doctorate. Pete, what are all these in? And still, TEFL in a month 30 years ago was one of the hardest qualifications I attained. Very interesting. Why would that be? Morning, Squire. Thoughts are with you and your lovely family. Hope things go well. Yep. Shout out and lots of love and a hug from Portugal. But that's all from us. Thank you, Sola. My visit to Portugal completely inspired me. Never thought I would finish it. It now means I can teach tattooing when I live in Portugal. Oh, yes. Very good. Looking forward to that. The WEF has labeled the outsiders as the discontented, trying to slander us. I'll say us.
Yeah.
Laugh my head off. Yeah, it's shaming, isn't it? We feel times are running out for the opportunity to emigrate, restrictions on freedom of travel, what you can buy, save, or sell. Well, it does certainly feel that way. The way things are going, people will soon make money on padded rooms and a stuffed doll, renting them out as swear and scream rooms.
That's a good idea.
Write that down.
Yeah, write that one down. Yeah.
We don't want to be dependents. We like doing things for ourselves. We like choice. And isn't that a great ethic to have in life? And actually, the digital system is based on being a dependent, isn't it? It's making you, I guess, a modern digital slave. It's very feudal, isn't it? And very, the people controlling you up here and you behaving in a certain way to operate and even exist, it feels like. Is this true? Ray Thompson, I asked a guy in Beijing where all the cats and dogs were. He said, we eat them. Animal ethnic cleansing. I wonder if that's true or funny. Do you need biometrics even with a residency permit? Okay, that's an interesting question. What's the answer to that, Tony? What's going to be happening ultimately, not just for the digital ID on the borders, but do you think, well, we do give biometrics for our residency permits, don't we? I did. I'm fingerprinted, retina scanned, anal probe, the whole lot. Not the last one.
Yeah. Well, this is why I say anyway, the reality is, unless you want to go live up a tree, you're going to have digital ID, I think, in a few years. I mean, your choice, what it is to me is that it's going to end up being what I hope is that this you can kind of live outside the system by staying in rural areas. I think that's what we're going to face in the future is that kind of choice.
It does look a lot like that, doesn't it? And Portugal does, I think, look like a good option for that. It's as though in the scheme of human history. I mean, we love looking back at history we're not involved in, don't we? Because of the thrills and spills of ancient history and all the dramas and death and destruction. But it's not so funny when we're involved in a part of it. And I think this is a part of it we're going to be involved in that some of us might not enjoy very much. But like we said before, there's an inevitability about it. And it's about how to cope with that, isn't it? And maybe for some people, it will be becoming one of the disaffected, the unhappy, or whatever those people are being shamed as.
Yeah. Well, I mean, someone mentioned on my channel about countries in Asia where you already have to give you biometrics, and I know, for example, Malaysia, for example, has my fingerprints, and because I've been on holiday there and I had to do all that to go there. So, what for me it is at the moment, the authorities in Malaysia, despite having they haven't got all of the information, they've got some of it, so they can't, like, if I do something to upset the Malaysian government, but it's like I say, it's like
Zoolander.
No, but they, you know what I mean, though,
Derek.
Like if I do something to upset the Malaysian government, it's not like tomorrow I'm not suddenly not going to be able to get any cash out of my bank account, right?
But it can happen here. What's more important, Tony, is it can happen here, and it can already happen here.
But that's what I mean. You put a lot of faith in your government, right? Don't you?
Yes.
And I don't have much faith in my government.
No.
So I don't want them to have that. I don't want them to have that much control, because people are saying, because you hear people say, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, but there's things that I want to be able to do that the government probably thinks is wrong. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be able to criticize. Like, you ever look what's happening in the UK at the moment? I mean, people are. I mean, some people have said things on Facebook, for example, and ended up in prison, and they're not things I would have said, and they're things that probably they wish they hadn't said either. Whether or not they went to prison, they probably by the next day thought they shouldn't have said them, that kind of thing. But did they deserve to be in prison? So what I'm seeing is I think there's overreach. Yeah, there's overreach by governments that 5 minutes ago we would have thought were reasonably I wouldn't have thought UK was a totalitarian,
It depends where you are and what you said. It's contextual and momentary, isn't it? Of course, it can be.
Yeah.
It
But
always
what?
has been if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time and the wrong person.
But what I mean, So I mean, for example, in Hong Kong, when I first got to Hong Kong, it was very normal to criticize the mainland government and the CCP, whereas now that will get you put in prison.
Is that
for
right?
example?
Yes. So
And in Hong Kong, people have already ceded a lot of their freedoms to. So we had things that even in Hong Kong, like the UK gave lots of Hong Kong people their the B&O, the B&O, the B&O British. They had this passport called British National Overseas.
Okay.
Which didn't really give you any extra rights, but it was something that when the handover happened in Hong Kong, you could either come back to the UK straight away, or you could have this B&O passport and stay. And some people took the B&O, and then after the umbrella movement, the recent political strife in Hong Kong, of course, Britain said, "Look, if you've got a B&O passport, you can come and live here." Yeah. And the Hong Kong government,
not that one, no, okay, all right.
The Hong Kong government retaliated by saying, who are basically the CCP now. The Hong Kong government is basically the CCP now, retaliated by saying, okay, well, if you go, you can't have your pension. You can't have your which people put into, that's people's money that they put into it. They just said, well, you can't have it. That's it. Yeah. If you go, you can't have your pension. And we might even look at seizing assets and all this sort of stuff. So I was advising people. I said, listen, put your B&O passport in your underwear and fly out on your Hong Kong passport, and then pull your B&O out when you get to, and there's that sort of thing. And apparently, apparently I've got an arrest warrant for me in Hong Kong. So
what was for giving out such advice to people?
Well, they won't tell me. I've spoke to the police there, and they won't tell me. They said, just come back.
Come back, and we'll talk to you about it.
Come back, and we'll talk to you about it. Yeah. So but apparently, I've broken this national security law, as they call it.
Really?
And it could be as simple. Yeah, it could be as simple as something I said on Facebook or whatever. But you can't criticize. You can't criticize the CCP now in Hong Kong, and the Hong Kong people have got themselves so in. They're not as bad yet as China, but with things like Octopus card and they've got a number there called
tentacles in every area of your life. That's
your Hong Kong ID number. Yes. And I think I've said before, it's a pro and a con, because where in Portugal the amount of different numbers you have makes things complicated, right? So you've got your NIF, you've got your social security number, you've got your it's all different numbers. In Hong Kong you have one number. Yes. Right. So your Hong Kong ID is your library card, your driving license, really? Everything.
Which does appear to be very efficient and a utopian dream, doesn't it? But of course, it's all about intention as ever.
Right. Yes. So of course it can be used against you very quickly. So suddenly your driving license can just not work anymore.
Wow, very interesting. My old school alumni, Chris Patton, gave Hong Kong to the Chinese. Isn't it funny to think that one man can do that? Compare that to Portugal or UK, bit of a reality shock, absolutely. And the Chinese police and army don't muck about. And guess who owns your electricity in Portugal? Right. Yeah. They wanted €5,700 for an online PLA course. What's that? I'm not sure what that means.
People's Liberation Army?
Yes, possibly. What, you could do an online course with them. Interesting contrast. According to morning, John. According to one survey of trust in government, China ranked first. You see, that's what I was asking you about.
Yeah, but you wouldn't say that you didn't trust them, though.
Okay, yeah, with 79% and the United States 22%. There you go. So where you're allowed to dissent, the figures are terrible.
I love G.
How is this going to look on my social credit score, I wonder, where it's not an issue and you can say, I've got no confidence, 22%. Whereas if your life and everything, your turnkey digital life depends on it, of course I'm satisfied with this government. I love them. Anything else I can do for you? Methinks ideology has something to do with that. And that's amazing, John. Thank you very much for those statistics there. So what remains then in the last 5 minutes or so of our show this morning is how to stay upbeat about this, I think, and what practical solutions you can muster as a result. I mean, certainly rural life in Portugal does look very attractive if the direction of travel in the big cities is all about measurement control. And it is here. One thing I wanted to mention is when I got into a big pickle with all my personal finances and taxation situation here, I went to the cash machine one day and it was shut down to me. And one of my debtors, is that who they would be? Somebody who I invoiced was called by the government and told to pay the government direct and not me. Now that is the sort of stuff we're talking about, isn't it? And it's just that's everyday stuff here in Portugal.
Yeah.
We do have that.
Portugal's crazy. I mean, I've spoken to people about this who talk about coming here because of this. And it's something you were speaking about before. How when you're an expat, it's not just you get that freedom, but also you're kind of insulated in a way, like you don't know what's going on. But actually, Portugal is much more tyrannical than England in many ways.
Yes, but in a way that's not obvious and is still overall very conducive to a decent way of life. Because that's what we're talking about here, isn't it? It's weighing up the balance. And all these ideas of tyranny and totalitarianism, like I said before, probably all countries have always been like that. If you're the wrong person in the wrong place,
the wrong
time of history. But I guess it's assessing the bigger picture, isn't it? It's like, okay, that's true, and this is what you and I discuss a lot, isn't it? Opposite things can be true at the same time. It can be seen
there's context, right? There's always context,
and it can be seen as tyrannical, but it can also be seen, and it is seen and enjoyed as an amazing place to have your life. So it's very complicated or complex. Was that survey conducted via WeChat? Then I guess most negative answers were deleted.
Probably no one was ever asked, to be honest.
Yeah, there's no need to ask people, is there, with a survey? Those trying to control, I wish them luck. I got no control over myself, so how they're going to accomplish that is beyond me. So yeah, I do. I think it's very interesting. Again, foot on the gas, foot on the accelerator. Not both. The gas and the brake, and we're moving perhaps into or developing the consciousness of like, I can see that's true, but I can also see that that's true, which is a completely opposite to be considered in the same mind. And these are the issues we're living in, perhaps, aren't they? When weighing up such issues, and it is easy, I think, to get a little bit depressed and upset by it. Which I think inspired your video and a lot of the comments, obviously, that come in as a result of making a video of that kind, but also balancing that with, generally speaking, if you pretty much sail the right side of things, this is a fabulous place to be. Where else are you going to go?
An argument on the other side would be if you're a Trekkie and that kind of utopian future is what you want, then this transition needs to happen. Actually,
yes, right.
This transition does need to happen. So,
yes,
it's
we are in a transition, aren't we? And yes,
I have to accept on some level that it's possible that I'm wrong, and that actually, everyone having a digital ID and a kind of all this universal credit and all, because as I've said to you before, Carl, sometimes I worry that I'm not giving things their dues because I think you can be ideologically captured without knowing that you're ideologically captured. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, definitely.
Sometimes you have to think, maybe this is the best way. I just don't know. I do, but I do think it's inevitable anyway.
I agree with you. And how are we going to, going back to the East, how will we Tai Chi and flow with that inevitability? God's tip of the day, then, as I've mentioned on a number of occasions, falling is one of the big dangers as we grow older. We take longer and longer to mend until eventually we don't. So it's worth avoiding. Here's some simple exercise for leg strength that will help you stay upright. Stand sideways on the stairs with one foot on the step above the other. Oh, this looks like fun. Keeping the lower leg straight and hips horizontal. Straighten the upper leg quickly, then lower down again. Very good.
Weighted vest as well. I've been using a weighted vest, and what's been interesting about that is when I first put it on, guys, I really noticed it throws your balance for a while putting on that extra weight, because obviously you can have that same weight using shopping bags, but the center of gravity is lower, right?
Yes.
But when you put on a weighted vest, it's quite amazing how much it throws off your balance. But then, of course, after walking with a vest for a few weeks, your legs strengthen up around the ankles.
Very
And
good.
yeah,
Okay.
so now I don't feel that at all. Even when I'm walking like in the woods or whatever, I really feel quite balanced. So I think
Very
that's a
good.
really good way to increase your
Thank
leg
you for that.
strength and your
Thank you.
balance.
Coach
Yeah.
Turner and the Portuguese are working together. Repeat that 10 times on each leg, 3 to 4 times a day. What are you doing on the stairs? Ah, yes. If you're unsure of your balance, use the banister or wall to help, or a passerby. This strength.
Well, that sounds like Tesco now. Doesn't it? If you're unsure of your balance, use the banister or wall to help, and then also remember to blink so that your eyes don't dry out.
This strengthens the legs, but also, thank you for that. This strengthens the legs, but also by keeping the hips horizontal, works the core muscles. Yes, so keep those hips
Actually,
horizontal.
just before we go, Carl, can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
Tesco, who have been messaging customers to say, look, we noticed that you're buying quite a lot of salty products, so we recommend cutting down on your salt.
Yeah.
Now, I think this is a context thing, because at the moment, a lot of us are worried about, the bloody nanny state and
Tyrannical.
elfin safety gone mad and everything like that.
Yeah.
But you could look at it another way and think, oh, that's quite nice that somebody in this company
Yes.
has made an effort to sort of think about that, and how's that going to benefit them?
Bottom line, I'm suspecting. But anyway, no, let's not get cynical at the end there, because this is interesting, because I know you've got a plan as well. Tiny population. Oh, just a couple of things. The top 5 trusted governments are Switzerland, Luxembourg, Finland, Sweden, and Norway. And Pete saying tiny populations with massive oil money are better governments. Shocking news. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? And it sounded like your escape plan might be France. Is that right, Tony? Were you looking at opportunities in France?
Oh, was I looking at opportunities in France? Well,
Yes.
I'll tell you a funny story, Carl.
Go on, Tony.
Yeah. I've applied to go and work at Citroen.
Really?
Yeah, but it's really funny. The recruitment process is really odd. They've asked me to make 2 CVs.
Thank you, Tony. Take care, everybody. See you this evening for the Expats Portugal webinar and the Dream Team at 9.
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show at GMP. Hey, Gumpers.